All right, Jacqueline, we ready? Okay, so welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Irma Gonzalez. I'm the Associate Dean of Counseling at Palo Verde College, presenting today with my colleague, Jacqueline Randall.
Hello, nice to meet you.
I'll give you a second to introduce yourself, sorry.
All right. Jacqueline Randall, Director of Student Success and Equity here at Palo Verde College. Just excited to be here, and hopefully you guys learn a little about what we're doing and our efforts towards the guided pathways.
Yeah. So our focus today is on our correspondence education program, mainly our incarcerated population. We have a large incarcerated population here at Palo Verde College. So that's where our focus is, and then just kind of by default, it's falling over to our community students. So we have titled our project The Revolution here at Palo Verde College. So we'll be referring to that throughout the presentation here. So starting off here, the objective is to share our progress of our Pirates Pathway, our Guided Pathways project. Move this over a second here. And we, again, demonstrating our focus on our incarcerated students and aligning our processes in an equitable manner for both our community students and our incarcerated students. Again, our focus is incarcerated, but we also included our community students by putting up our Guided Pathways website, which we plan to launch next week for first week of May. Also, we have tons of just giveaways and supplies with our Pirate Pathways logos to help our students with their different, whatever it's, we got folders, we got pens, we got USBs, all kinds of supplies to get them going.
So just a little on our background and how we got involved with the incarcerated population. We were the first institution to pilot the inmate education, and we started that about 2000-2001 year at Ironwood State Prison, which happens to be a maximum prison within our city limits. It's about 20 miles out. Since then, the program has grown to include both of the local institutions, which is also Chuckawalla Valley State Prison, which sits a mile before Ironwood. And now that when we were at our peak, we actually served an additional 17 institutions throughout the state. Just going back to when we first launched, I will say it launched through EOPS, and it was started with in-person counseling. And so we had a couple of counselors at that time who really went out there and really attracted and recruited the students. We now do mainly at that point, it started off with just instruction through correspondence only. And we did introduce an online program in 2011 that is actually on C Yard at Ironwood, and it's called the Inmate Education Network. And for us, for Palo Verde College, our incarcerated population is approximately about half of our FTES. So it's a very, very crucial part of our population. Next slide. So we're going to start off with a poll because it'd be very interesting. We're always curious about how many of our fellow colleges are actually serving populations, the incarcerated population, excuse me. We know that we deal with other schools and we run into other schools, but just interested. If you guys want to, participate in the poll real quick, does your institute serve incarcerated students? There's no right or wrong answer here at all.
It's interesting to find out how many campuses are just now taking on incarcerated students. So it's hopefully we can learn from each other.
Yes. So no, 2 yes, no, formally in the past plan. So most of them no. Cool. I'll tell you, it's a good and informative and innovative way that we've really had to do to run our program. Well, cool. Thank you. We can end that. Thank you guys for answering. So that kind of helps us tailor and know how to direct this conversation as well.
All right.
Next.
So Anna, do I X out of that?
I gotcha.
Okay. Okay. All right, so continuing on, we had to get really creative when COVID hit. But the good thing is, prior to COVID, we already started to see a lot of issues communicating with our incarcerated students. within our own departments in student services and with instruction. So we already started to put some actions in place, but really didn't focus on them until COVID hit and kind of had to speed up the process. So before, for orientation, we used to go on site and do orientations on various yards. Jacqueline led that, that project there and do in-person orientations. And then we also had a handbook with a self-guided quiz, with a self-guided orientation with a quiz at the back. With COVID, we got creative and actually did a quiz, an orientation with a radio. We have one of our colleagues here on campus has a radio station, a local radio station, and a lot of our incarcerated students listen to that station all the time. There's certain hours, I think, right, Jacqueline, that they're able to listen to the radio or they have that freedom. So we were able to pass out or send out the quiz on paper to all the incarcerated students. And then the quiz on the radio played, I think it was like 4 separate days, I can't remember, at certain hours. And then they were able to answer the questions via the radio, and then submit their sheets back to us so they would get orientation credit. So again, we had to get creative with COVID, and that was pretty neat how that worked out. Counseling services, again, we used to go, I'm sorry, Jacqueline?
I'm sorry, we did it in English and Spanish too.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. For counseling and other support services, again, prior to COVID, we'd actually go out to the 2 local prisons. I should define Iowa State Prison and Chocowalla Valley State Prison. We'd go out there in person to do our counseling, financial aid, admissions and records, etc. And then again, COVID hit and everything shut down. So we had to really use the courier service. With instruction, we provide packets of syllabi and coursework to go out at the beginning of the year, and then it would come back throughout the semester. With COVID and then starting to look at the revolution and the issues, we started to focus on bringing in CDCR staff to kind of help us identify some of our own weaknesses and how we can work internally to fix those weaknesses and work better with them. So one thing we identified, a big part was just integrating instruction and student services, but even within student services, working together, EOPS, DSPS, general counseling, admissions and records, financial aid. We were all kind of in silos before, somewhat communicating, but it was causing a lot of issues. So we brought all that together, ultimately, again, to enhance the student experience. So that's kind of the progress we're making right there. And we're starting to see some positives in that, but we're still moving in that direction.
So this all started, we started off with the guided pathways, and with that we started with the liaisons back in 2018. We did the last guided pathways conference in Riverside as a huge team, did a whole bunch of planning together. We met regularly as a group, as a committee on campus, and we had definitely established the 4 pillars that earmarked our progress. But what we noticed is that we were doing a lot of meeting, but we needed to do some action. And so luckily, and I will say, well, and Angelica and Helica and Leslie definitely put the fire there and said, we're moving. But in addition to that, Corona kind of pushed everything and all our efforts together faster. And then we were able to actually focus this, and that's where the evolution was born. And the huge part, back to what Irma brought up in the previous slide, is that we really learned that we should be integrating, and we needed to integrate the student services and the instruction. So just to give a little more about the progress, is that student services, we're on this side, we support the services, we're doing the orientations, we're doing the counseling, we were providing all of that support. At the same time, instruction is also making their syllabi available. They had their own process. And so those were going out through our instructional staff and instructional department. The problem is that sometimes their messages and our messages were not the same or clarified. And a lot of times that we did not know what each other's hands were doing. So we were doing things not knowing that we were possibly stepping on the toes and just causing confusion on instruction and vice versa. So we said, okay, no more. Beginning in fall and the COVID realities, we needed to increase what we were doing, and therefore we got the revolution. And I just want to say thank you, Sarah, for that name. Yes, thank you. But it also brought every single one of our constituent groups together. So it stretched not just, I know I say we instruction, but no, it brought the Senate involved with this. It brought the counseling department to be involved in this. It brought admissions and records, which is huge. It wasn't just representatives from each department, it were these total departments who had a voice, in addition to CDCR. So how this started, we actually started this a little before it became the revolution. Just working over here, being part of student success and being part of the orientations, we noticed that, okay, there's our petitions and our requests and our communication from our inmates, and not the homework, we're talking just straight requests, had increased to an amount that was starting to become a little more than manageable for us. And so we started looking at these needs. So we pulled data. What are we hearing about most? Lack of communication. They need clarification. So we were able to identify exactly what these themes were with all of this communication. And then that's when we realized, okay, one of the issues are students aren't always sure what classes they're in at the very beginning. And part of that is because either the correct syllabi was not getting in the correct hands, or the instructor might have changed, or we were still having to go through. So we had already put in place about a year ago, we would go out there and hand the students their syllabi and their schedules for each semester. So we were, let's take out the middleman, but that also increases their experience and to see us. You know, most of it is they want to see Palo Verde College. And so we started doing that more. And we were direct and we were effective and we were deliberate about those intentions. So when we went out there, it was a whole lot less mistakes. We did it we wanted to pilot it first to see if that would mitigate some of those issues. And so we did it at our 2 local prisons. And I will say that we have the data to back it up, that it mitigated the issues of students not being in the correct courses, they're doing work for an instructor that didn't even know they're on the roster. It was crazy. But us handing everything to them and giving them the time to say, yes, this is the course I'm in. Yes, this is the correct syllabi, have them sign off on it, us bring it back. We were able to not only just have a contact with that students, also gain their trust, but it also put them on the right path at the right time. So, but that developed until later on in the fall, then COVID happened. And so from there, we now have identified 3 design teams that will actually concentrate on the largest issues that were brought up and that we noticed and collected through the communication that we had directly with the students through petitions, through letters, through correspondence, and also through the CDCR staff, in addition to the instructors, because instructors were hearing a lot of these issues as well through their homework and through their assignments. So. Yes.
All right, thank you, Jacqueline. So kind of following up on the design teams, they were really formed based on our design principles, and we'll go into the design principles here in a little bit. But with Rob and Sarah, our Senate, we really came together, and Angelica, to focus on where are our issues? Where are we falling short? What's going on, and how can we fix that? So through our whole process, we were able to divide the issues into 3 different components and 3 different design teams. So like Jacqueline said, focusing on the syllabi, student services, collaborating more, and then mailing and communication, and getting a better system in place so that we can communicate with the CDCR staff, students, and then back and forth with us. Through these design teams and our design principles, it kind of held us accountable, and we were responsible to responding back to our teams. Okay, where are we? What's the progress made? Have we identified these issues? What steps are we going to do to recommend some resolutions to these issues? And we bring it back to the committee every so often, and then within each other. And I think just being accountable as a associate dean, director, instructor, counselor, whatever, each of us were responsible for our part of the project, and then bringing that back kind of gave us a big picture of, okay, this is what we need to do, or these are some of the projects we need to bring forward.
So our design principles, number one had to be equity. We had to kick it off with equity. And that's part of, you know, we have to be committed. So I wasn't there, but they already knew what my for the first one meeting, and they knew no matter what, equity is going to be number 1. And with that, our equity mindset is saying that we're committed to dismantling the systematic racism and disability disparity, gender disparity, and barriers due to sexual orientations and other isms, closing equity gaps and moving closer to cultural humility and social justice, including our students who are or formerly incarcerated. We will do this by honoring and serving our diverse student population and community and integrating an equity mindset grounded in self-reflection and intrapersonal awareness in our designs. First of all, to do anything, we have to be self-aware. Were we approaching everything with the equity mindset? Not necessarily. And I mean, we're just being truthful. We did a lot of focus on our community students, of course, because they're right here, they're in our face every day. And we got away from our incarcerated student population. But our numbers and data show that they need to do that. And the equity side of this is we need to make sure that their needs are met as well, so they can also be successful. Part of that is that led into number two, agency. Who are we going to be accountable to? So now we're accountable and responsible for being innovative and making comprehensive structural and cultural changes to improve the student experience and move beyond the status quo. We recognize a responsibility in this work and that we have agency and a sense of urgency in improving student outcomes. We're improving student outcomes. We're not just going to continue to do a program because we have. And that's why I really commend what we've done on our campus, is because we have all taken that responsibility. We want to see outcomes. We want to see improved outcomes. We just don't want to know that, okay, the student got their work. We want to make sure they were successful in that.
Transformation. So continue with our design principles. Even though we've serviced our incarcerated students for a long time, and not just our two local prisons, but a lot of our outlining prisons, it was time to change. It was time to really use a growth mindset in transforming our approach to optimize that student experience. Again, going back to the memos, going back and forth, frustration, concerns, I'm in the wrong class, how come I'm not graduating, petition for this, petition for that. That really opened our eyes to, okay, it's time to transform what we're doing, bring everybody together, collaborate, and figure out how to provide that better experience out to our students. And that also, as we're focusing on incarcerated students, we're also bringing that over to our community students as well. But again, the biggest issue were with our incarcerated students. Timelines, again, to be accountable for our projects and our responsibilities, we put together timelines. We're putting together timelines. We're not quite there yet, but timelines so that we can check in at certain points. Where are we? Are we where we need to be? Do we need to take a step back and kind of relook at certain things and then switch things around? Not everything has worked for us so far. So there's been some setbacks. We've had to kind of step back a little bit, relook at things, and what do we have to change so that this can work? And then just bringing all of us together and switching gears a little bit. So again, our timeline is important. It's not where we want to be right now, but we're moving in that direction for the most part. This is still me. Okay. Focus and mission. Each design team identified 2 to 3 student experience challenges, and that was our focus in attempting to solve. Funding, moving on to number 6, funding. There has been no lack of funding. There's been money coming out of everywhere to help us, but it hasn't been too pricey yet. But every department has stepped up, every department has provided their input, and every department has provided any funding that we have needed. So we've been very grateful for that hasn't been an issue. In the past, funding was an issue for other projects, but fortunately for the Revolution, funding has not been an issue.
So the decision making. Again, we wanted to make sure that this the decision making was not occurring in a silo. Silos kind of got us where we are, right? As a state, not just us. But we said, no, this needs to be a campus decision-making process. And so with that, the Guided Pathways Committee is the overseer of everything that we're doing underneath the Revolution. But anywhere from the Student Success Task Force, Academic Senate, CTA, CSCA, ASG, our student government, They're all involved with this process. We want to make sure that we are getting the correct feedback. We're not depending on anecdotal data and information any longer. We're collecting solid data. We're incorporating student voices. Students, what do you want? What do you need? And that's also from the prison and also from our community students. What do you need to see for us to enhance your experience? And you get to decide as well. I think that's been a huge thing, and a different cultural shift about just moving from silos, right? Like there's no one department that's making any of these decisions. And therefore, when we do take anything that needs to be stamped and approved by the board, we're doing that as a solid one group coming from Guided Pathways, not just a sole department or group. Leveraging relevant data to inform action. Oh my gosh, we've been collecting data for so long. Now we're using the data to actually make informed decisions. And that's one of the most exciting things, is to actually, and it started probably with, we had the institutional research, but I will say AB 705 gave us the open door to actually use this data and to give us a focus. And with that AB 705, that's where a lot of the data was pilfered from and used to say, hey, look, this is where we're gapping. This is where we're falling behind. This is what we need to focus on. And I'm not going to say falling behind because that's not fair, but at the same time, this gives us the target. What are we going to do about this particular group of students? And that's where a lot of the information even came from, that incarcerated students were not doing as well as we thought they were when we start pulling that data. I know it's easy to say, okay, they have all the time in the world, but they don't have all the time in the world. And in addition to that, they also have other mental barriers. They have physical barriers. They have access barriers. So we had to really start taking a look at the reality, not what we thought and assumed, but basically what are the students saying? What is our data saying? What are the completion rates saying? What's the retention saying? So we really started using that data to inform our decisions, and that's what actually helped us get to the revolution. Thank you. Math and English, AB 705, yes. Use that data. We used it heavily to say, this is what it is. This is how our students are not faring well. This is the group of students who are faring well. This is what we're looking at. They're looking at community students. We're looking at incarcerated students versus how are we offering these classes? Are the students doing well in the correspondence classes? And if not, what can we do to further support that? Especially in COVID. When we went to COVID, we had zero choice. We could only do correspondence or online. So that meant, what do we do to support those students? It was one thing that, be able to support them as incarcerated students, but what could we do even for our community students? So incarcerated students, we beefed up the communication through memos, but a lot of that was using that math and English data. Why are these students why are they not graduating? Why are they not completing? And so we looked at that data, and that's when we really started saying, okay, we need to do something targeted. Student success and support model. It came to let's talk about our student-centered. How are we actually doing this? When we started doing orientations again, it was in person, because again, we would go to every yard. It is a long day process. We start at anywhere from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, and we're out there their entire education time, going from yard to yard, because we know that if we're doing the counseling and advising, if we're doing the orientation, if they're hearing it from us, that information is going to be retained a little more than if they're just reading a guide. And we felt that that was very necessary. And going back to that handbook guide, we actually increased it. We actually, it used to just be straight text, right? Really no images here and there, but it was real text. We actually took it a step further. We actually have now provided and expanded it to make sure that every single petition that is relevant to them to get through their entire education is in that handbook. And every day we're talking. I have another department saying, well, what do you think about this? Well, maybe we should incorporate this in the book. That's the student success support model. The book now is a student-centered approach. What does a student need who's not necessarily has contact to our campus and contact to sit there and answer, to call like they do, or send us an email. So we had to switch up our entire, going back to the equity mindset, that's how we kind of employed that, is that we had to think like an incarcerated student to make sure that we met those needs. And a lot of that was getting feedback from them. So with that, we're doing a whole lot. We want to incorporate even mentoring. We want to incorporate some of the programs. We have a Fresh Start workshop on campus. We have now developed, we're actually developing that so we can make that a correspondence program for those students who are not doing well. in those courses. So again, we're being very deliberate and intentional about what we're doing at this program.
Number 11, use of mandatory. The design teams can mindfully include mandatory and or inescapable. Mandatory kind of felt like a harsh word. So we transitioned to inescapable steps for students that they need to follow these certain steps, whether it's orientation, educational plan, financial aid, whatever it may be. Even though they're mandatory, we made them more just kind of inescapable steps for the students to follow to ensure that they're following the steps of success to get to where they need to be. Communication and engagement plan, just like Jacqueline talked about, just more communication amongst departments on campus, more communication with the, not proctors, but peskies at the prisons, just increasing that communication all around. Everything's transparent, everything's open, everything's relevant to where the direction that we're moving in. Most recently, we talked about having more presence on the two local prisons of PVC staff. So whether it's counseling, admissions and records, financial aid, fiscal services, they want to go out there as well, but more presence on site so that the communication flows a little bit better versus the memos going back and forth where it gets difficult to respond to that memo in a timely manner, really understand what that memo means sometimes, or if it's a petition, whatever it may be. So really being transparent, effective in our communication, relevant to the stakeholders on campus, different departments, our students, administration, and engaging all around as we progress through these projects. Continuing on, professional development, we're committed to identifying professional development needs and creating the appropriate opportunities for all stakeholders. This has been huge, especially working with the Rising Scholars Network. Our Senate president has been instrumental in communicating with us, just the communication between CDCR and our administration and the Rising Scholars Network supporting us and providing different opportunities, different updates on certain things, whatever it may be. But that's been huge in this whole process moving forward. Also communicating with CDCR themselves. That's been, I think, a huge growth for us as well professionally, is communicating with CDCR and finding mutual boundaries that we can work together. Most recently, we were planning on going out there 2, 3, 4 days a week, every couple of weeks. And then we were told, well, we'd rather have you guys here 2 days a week because staff is not available on certain days. So just really increasing that communication has helped just us identify where our needs are and where our gaps are and what we can put forward to be more relevant out there. GP groups, Jacqueline sent out a bunch of online workshops with the GP. I'm sorry, Jacqueline, I think I pronounced that wrong. The last
Fresh start.
I'm drawing a blank right now. We're going to skip that for now.
Yes.
And also working with the state and chancellor's office to help identify additional professional development opportunities. Moving on
for next week. Yes. Gotcha. The RP group stuff and the West Ed and all of that. So
thank you. Yes. Thank you. Yes, that one. So professional development all over the place. Number 14, student involvement. All design teams will integrate a diverse range of student perspectives where appropriate. This could involve including a student on your design team or conducting focus groups on a key design team issue you want to explore. So we're still moving in that direction. We don't have students on our design teams at the moment, but that's the direction we want to move as we go forward. Future.
Yes, our Pirate Pathways future. So we definitely want to maintain a student focus and equity mindedness. And a lot of that is, like Irma said, we're launching the website next week. And with that, when we say we're launching the website, this is not going to be an internal process. We're actually going to share this with the students with the link so they can also be aware of it. That's just huge. We're also preparing to send this type of communication to our incarcerated population. And I will say that the counselors are also working with the incarcerated population to make sure, because we're also aligning them better. Part of the data collection we found out is that we had some incarcerated students who were taking like 4 programs. They're like all trying to achieve these 4 programs. And so they're just taking all of these classes. And some of the programs were just because they took these classes, not necessarily because that's what they wanted to do. And so we were like, this is insane. They're never going to get to the program completion. So what we decided the counselors decided, it was recommended that maybe we should streamline this. Let's talk to the incarcerated students and let them know, hey, let's work on one program, get that completed, and then we will work on the next program, and we'll work on the next program. But we also knew some of the backlash would be, well, can you guarantee I'm going to complete this program? I'm doing these programs because I can never seem to get these final classes to complete any of these programs. Well, that was a slap in our face. That was a wake-up call to us because they were right. So when we started examining, faculty's been doing an excellent job. They're examining, have we completed these courses? Have we actually even offered all the courses needed to complete a program in a particular program of study? So they've been working really hard diligently between our instructing faculty and our counseling faculty. They've really been trying to bring that together to make sure that they're meeting the needs of the student. So if we're going to guarantee the students are going to be able to pass the course or complete their degrees, we are going to be offering the courses for them. So that was a huge thing. So when I say that's what we're doing, equity mindedness, that's definitely how we're maintaining that, is because we are considering them first. Continue planning and collaboration with the design teams. Obviously, we got those 3 design teams. We have a 4th one that we might consider. I think, Irma, right? Like that might come up if we find there's some other gaps that we need to address when it comes to us, coming together for all of this within our guided pathways on campus. Yes. Pirate Pathways website. I will say our librarian took the lead on that, and she's did a fabulous job. And I'm just like so happy that you could go there, because this is something we've been talking about actually probably since we first met with Leslie and them, and we just could not get that done. Even though we saw Bakersfield's, we saw everyone's, Barstow's, but it was like, okay, we need ours. And I just want to say June did that. Thank you. We want to align our correspondence support needs for our community students. I say that because a lot of what we do sometimes is we kind of concentrate on one population and not really keep, in mind about how that might affect another population. And so that kind of goes back to the equity mindedness. We need to, whatever we do for the incarcerated students, we're going to match it up and make sure that our community students are also taken care of. In many ways, we're talking about in-person tutoring. That's one of the things that is huge out there at the prison. I will say some of the yards do a little better, that they have their peer counselors right there who offer to help. On here, especially in COVID, we've been trying to really grasp a way that we're able to offer this support, because I don't know if you guys know, but we're located like 6 miles outside of our city center. And with our campus being down, our public transportation is not bringing students here. They're not running. And so therefore, it's that to have those type of services have been really difficult. Yes, we offer online tutoring, but we come to discover that they're sharing internet with their children who also been on, at home. So we've had to really work around these. And how are we going to address that for our community students? We're talking about in-person tutoring in the community. If we can either hook up with the Palo Verde Unified, who's our local K through 12, and or we're talking about the public library. We're saying, what can we do? And we could pay the tutor to be there and address those needs. In addition to that, leading up to that, we actually had drop boxes placed at Smart and Final, our 2 local grocery stores, and there's drop boxes for our community students to drop off their homework. So it gets turned in a little quicker than if they were to mail it in, like our incarcerated student population. In addition to that, we're going to develop a tool to scale the efforts. And I say tool, it might look like a training video, various training videos, because again, going back to what Irma had discussed when it comes to communication, our outlier prisons, we haven't visited. We haven't, they're far. But in addition to that, we noticed that we may not have communicated effectively some of the changes in our expectations of what we're expecting. And because they do have turnover, we have turnover. We're like, we need to do training videos. So therefore that can take place of us having to have this conversation all the time. But we should also offer tutorials for anyone who needs to know how to service and how to help out the process as a pesky at the prisons, but also what are the expectations for family members? Because we have a lot of family members who talk, who speak on behalf of our incarcerated students. They need to have those tutorials too, to know exactly what the expectations are and how to, monitor and get through certain processes. create recruiting documents. We want to make sure that anything that we recruit when moving forward, when we are talking about and trying to get the students out, it's a pirate pathway. We're branding this pirate pathways. This is going to involve all of our ADT groups. And if you're not on a pirate pathway, you're still welcome on campus. You're definitely there. We just know that, okay, we're working on a different path. But our pirate pathways is our new brand. That's something we've done. It doesn't even look like any of the other stuff that we have. We really wanted to make this fresh, make this new, separated from our old ways, and establish this is our new way. And highlight successes. We want to highlight those. If we have something that's come up and if somebody's like brought to our attention, we had someone who just completed this ADT, wherever they're at, or if we have even internal successes, right? I think our team has been working fabulously, and we want to highlight those too. And when I say highlight them, we want to publicly highlight them. We want to make sure that our local communication, our local publication, newspaper, they're in the know. We have it on our website. We're passing it on, sharing it with the Guided Pathways group. We want to share our successes because we're out here in I'd like to say East Coast of California, and we're so far out, and sometimes, you know, we forget that we're here, and we need to tell others that we are here, and we're answering the call to action, and we just want to continue that progress. So
small victories go a long way. Baby steps.
Baby steps.
Yes, we're getting there.
Yes, that's our motto right now. Baby steps.
Baby steps. Baby steps. Yeah. All right. So our 5 questions. We've kind of answered these throughout the presentation. How has this improved the student experience? Again, just we're focusing on more presence on the sites, Chicawala and Ironwood State Prison, and we're hoping that by us being out there, we can engage with the student. The student can feel more part of the student at PVC and not so distant through memos and whatnot. The CAN syllabi, the 10 different sections of the same class has the same syllabus, so students aren't confused if they get the wrong section, the wrong instructor, whatever it may be. They're still doing the right assignments, collaborating amongst us here on campus just to provide that better experience out there. How has this addressed or improved racial equity on campus or on CDCR sites? Jacqueline, I don't know if you want to touch on that one.
Yes, so with some of this data that we've pulled, again, no more anecdotal stuff. When we pulled this data, we've seen that, oh, wow, we may not be doing as great in certain areas as we thought. So with this moving forward, this is, again, work in progress. We're actually going to be able to focus on certain populations. I will say, in the future, there will be a study that's done specifically for our Black male students, because in theory, you would think that our Black males, that you hear about it, right? Our students of color, our people of color are the highest incarcerated population, right? And of course, Black males. Well, when we pulled the data, we noticed that the Black males were not attending, enrolling, or even completing at the rates of anyone else. So that's totally against what you would think in theory. So with that, a study is being done specifically for Black, formerly incarcerated Black male students, and to ask why they didn't, what their attitudes were about college while they were incarcerated. Out of that study, hopefully we can come up with some recruitment outreach efforts that target Black males and that have that thought process in mind. Because again, incarcerated Black males are suffering those rates at the same way as pretty much on the streets. And so that was a little astounding. So we're getting there. I will say Puente pathway was born out of this. We're starting our Puente program, and that Puente program is actually aligned. We are creating, Irma's on that team, and so we are aligning this a lot with the pirate pathways. And so even though they will be a Puente student, they will also be on one of these pathways, and so we can definitely ensure them that they could complete everything in 2 years. And that's one of it. What role did data play in our efforts? Oh, a lot. We just started, like I said, we were collecting data and just not really looking at it. When we start pulling the data and being intentional and deliberate about it, that's when we noticed, oh my God, we have some serious issues here. Our completion rates weren't as high as we would like them to be. I mean, and I say that, but who's our, right? But we want ours better and we wanted to increase it. So to do that, we wanted to definitely make sure that we were being intentional. What are we doing? So now let's ask these questions. Why are Hispanic students not achieving at the rates that we want them to? What's going on here? Why aren't our Black females not achieving as much as we expected them to do, or even what research says that they should? What are we doing? So that's really put a lot of focus on what we're doing. But like I said, it started with the letters, and we noticed when we start logging letters and petitions and started coming and found out and start actually tracking the themes within these letters, that's how we knew that, okay, we got a huge issue here. And I guess that brings us to student engagement too, because it was their voices that said something's wrong. When they were complaining, they were fussing. I will say, I actually, I taught out there before COVID happened, and that was a lot of the complaints. They were telling us, we're not hearing back from this, you know, they're not getting their it was a lot of like, are they enrolled in a class? There was a student who had went through almost an entire semester, and he had did work for the wrong instructor and did not know that. And a lot of that was, you know, due to the processes. We got the mail, got to wait on the mail, got to wait on all of that. But this poor soul had been doing the work, and somebody had handed him the wrong syllabus. So if he didn't know any better, he can't go online to find out what his schedule was. And that's why we really reviewed some of our practices on campus to ensure the students knew what they were supposed to be doing. Are you even supposed to be in this class? So we wanted to empower them too. So that kind of goes into the student experience. We wanted to empower them too, give them their schedule. If they know what their schedule is, then they will also be able to advocate for themselves while they're there to say, okay, Pesky, I think I don't think I have the right syllabus for the right course because my schedule says this is my instructor. And because they didn't have really any idea who they weren't able to do that. So we really wanted to tighten up those type of gaps.
So that was the students' voices. There were memos and letters back and forth to us. Last question, if you have not integrated these ideas in your work yet, then how? Again, that's part of our whole design teams is we're putting these recommendations forward, and little by little, we're chipping away at them and finding ways to implement them to fix our own processes. What recommendations do you have for others to employ this in the future? I don't think we're there yet. I think we're still working on our own internal processes and on us, but and we're learning from other institutions who are ahead of us. So we're not ready for that one yet. But if you have any questions, we're here to answer any questions.
I know we weren't that thorough. Come on, guys. You got to have a question. There, maybe we were, huh?
So I heard you guys talking a lot about like packets for the schoolwork, right? And then one of my questions when you guys were talking in the session earlier was about, you know, like financial aid for students that are incarcerated and how that goes, right? And so they don't get federal, but they do get state, and they can be part of special programs and stuff. My question is, how do they apply for this if they don't have access to computers and online resources?
So we are still in the Stone Age. Everything is paper, paper, paper. Paper application, paper schedule card, paper bogs, paper educational plans, paper, paper, paper. So when we talk about memos going back and forth, it's everything. It's like we're in the 90s again with all the paper.
Okay, and then my other question is, do you guys implement like any kind of packets or anything for your community students as well, or is like that all online?
It depends. So they get syllabi. And when we say packets, the reason why we're saying packets for them, and we probably should clarify that. So packets for the incarcerated students, that includes like their schedule, that includes their syllabi, and that also includes any first assignments through a certain amount of weeks, depending on who that instructor is. So that's why they're getting complete packets. Sometimes, depending on how many courses they're in, their packet can be here, and that packet is actually put into a folder and then rubber banded. And we have our student services memo that we actually communicate that. So when it comes to our campus students, they actually access most of their stuff, their information from their instructors. Most of that is through Canvas. And so because they have that online accessibility, the majority of them have them there, or others will send it out with the information to say, okay, your correspondence, then you can, and let them know exactly how they can access their assignments and their syllabi. A lot of it is here. We're sending it electronically. Our instruction departments printing, making it available. So when they were allowed to come on campus, they were actually coming on campus and picking them up. But since COVID, our instruction department's actually mailing out these syllabi based on their schedules to every student, and that does include the community students.
Okay, thank you.
A lot.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but I was just wondering about that because, like, if we could do it for our incarcerated students, we should be able to do it for our community students too. And I know that when we went online fully because of COVID, a lot of students that were coming into our teaching and learning support center where we hold our tutoring and stuff were just saying basically when we would call them and check up on them, you know, that they weren't going to go to school because they weren't good with technology and they didn't have that ability, you know what I mean? And other students, you know, like only have one computer and they're sharing it with their kids, and you know what I mean? And so I'm just like kind of, you know, my brain is just going a little bit, you know, thinking about all the information. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And just to tag up on that, so because of that, and we knew that there was a lot of accessibility issues, we actually started up a laptop program specifically for our community students so they could check those out, and they're on loaners. In addition to, we also had a limited number of Wi-Fi accessibility, so we did that as well until we ran out. So those got taken up immediately. But we do have laptops that students are able to fill out and apply to loan out for each semester to kind of handle that need.
Right. We definitely implemented something similar to that as well.
Yeah. So it's a lot, and so a lot of it's too, and we've really just even started reaching out to our students more and encourage them. So soon as COVID hit, I got this weird hair in my brain. It was like, let's send out emails to the students. And so I did. And so every week all the way through the end of the last semester, our spring semester, 2020, the students heard from us. They heard something from us, whether it was an opportunity for money, whether it was, you know, just a reminder about something, and whether it was just a motivational speech. They got something from student services every single week just to get them through the remainder of the semester, because it was tough. It was tough for us to have to arrange. We have a campus full of the students we have to suddenly no one. And then you see them. And so we had when our campus closed, we had a food pantry that was scheduled the next day or 2 days later. We had to divert that and switch up everything on that too. So, and now that what we do for that has actually come another avenue for us to outreach to our students and communicate and see them. But it was tough. It was tough. And so a lot of our conversations.
Phone calls, Jacqueline, we remember you implemented the phone calls.
Yes.
Like intrusive phone calls from counselors, advisors, and staff. We were just calling students and trying to get them back on track. What's going on? How can we help? Can we meet you at Smart and Final in town? You know, whatever it may be, but just phone calls, emails, any way to communicate with them.
Yeah, it is tough because just to make it clear, like, we are guests at these prisons. So I wish we could just go out there and show up and do whatever we need to do, how we need to do it without any of the red tape or barbed wire fence. But it's not. So we have to be very respectful. And this actually, again, made us really look at our practices. Like, we have to make sure we're arranging this stuff in advance, because a lot of times, heck, we have come here at 6 o'clock in the morning, at 6:30, ready to go. And then we get a mass email, lockdown, can't come. That just put our entire processes into, oh my gosh, what do we do? When are we going to be able to get back out there? Which made us have to say, we need to communicate whatever we're doing and whatever we're saying out loud and articulating in person. We need to have all of that on paper. So when this happens again, because I said it when and if this happens again, then we need to be prepared and make sure we have that information available so we can immediately transfer and do what we need to do. Yes, it has definitely been all over the place, definitely, and that was that was an issue too. So CDCR oversees everything in Sacramento level at the headquarters, but each individual institution is able to make their own solid decisions about how they deal with us, even though there's oversight up there. And so when you're dealing with 17 different institutions plus the 2 here, it's all over the place. And every institution doesn't do things the same. I mean, we have one way that we do a security clearance right here at the 2 prisons that sit next door. We do one process for one prison and an entirely different process for the other prison. And that's just to get in their gates.
When you guys actually go in there, do you how does it work? Do you have kind of someone going in there, like a motivational speaker or someone with similar background and experience to kind of try to get these students enrolled? Like, how do you kind of
we don't have an issue getting them enrolled.
Oh, enrollment is the least of the issues.
Not an issue.
Okay, all right.
And there's something tied to that because there actually is laws. So the state themselves, they are able to, there's 2 different things. And Sarah, you might be able to clarify a little more. If they repeat, or if they do achieve so many credits, they actually get on one program 180 days shaved off their sentence, and then another program for different courses and other things that they do, they get 30 days. So recruitment is never the issue.
That's really cool, that the institution works with your guys' educational program like that, to shave off, to get these students enrolled and to have them do this thing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can, I'm Sarah, and I work at PVC as well. I'm the Academic Senate President, and there's a number of things that are working in our favor right now. Number one, the launch of the Rising Scholars Network, which is the official partnership between California Community Colleges and CDCR. And we are having a number of Zooms. I think we're having probably 5 or 6 between now and the end of the term, the beginning of June. And also the new Title V language that came effective December 20th around student equity and diversity and inclusion. All of that has really helped us encode the changes that we want to do. And additionally, the Board of Governors just came out with new Title V regs to be officially effective May 1st, which also really helps us as well in terms of making changes and leveraging the language that's around. And I think that's kind of the concept about some of these things are optional, but when the state and the Chancellor's Office makes these things mandatory, then we have no choice but to be progressive about it and to be transformational. And I think that's also why we went with the term revolution. We definitively wanted to draw a line in the sand between what we used to be doing and avoid blame and avoid whatever, that's antiquated, and we want to be focused on moving forward and really doing something powerful that will impact students. And to be frank, our administration wasn't really crazy about the term revolution. It felt too,
True. This is our space. Yes.
But we held firm, and we were this is actually we need this to be revolutionary, because the way that it is right now is unacceptable. It's unacceptable for our students, and it didn't feel good. So I'm really proud to be part of what we're doing here.
Thank you, Sarah.
And just to kind of reiterate what Jacqueline was talking about, Brandy, another one of our fellow staff members here, milestone credits. That's for students complete so many units, they complete a degree, certificate, whatever it may be, they get milestone, and it chops away time from their sentence. So just to kind of elaborate on that. And then Sarah is really being humble here, but she's the brains behind this whole thing. She's the one that brought us together. She's our Senate President here at Palo Verde College, and she really brought us together, and I don't know how else to say it, but just kind of snap the whip. Come on, guys, we need to get this together and get going, and brought us and gave us these ideas. So
I did not snap the whip.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
She
And
did,
that's what
she did for our administration, I will say that.
I do hold firm. I do hold firm on the principles I believe in. Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think that the work that we're doing here is critical, especially as we're talking about like this most vulnerable population that we're looking to serve. And I think in our history, to be frank, we have done a lot of like kind of shameful language around like serving incarcerated students and very uncomfortable. We don't know how to talk about it, you know? And so we are moving forward with pride. We are doing something that's super important. And our criminal justice involved students deserve our utmost respect, and they deserve access to our educational opportunities, and they deserve to move on with their lives in a way that is productive for our communities. So and for themselves, really. So I look to really change that kind of perspective or attitude, where what we are doing is less than for our non-incarcerated students.
I will say before we close real quick, because I think we got just like 5 minutes. Just real quick, that they are listed on our student equity plan. We have identified that our incarcerated population are a special population for our campus. So it's been there. I would like to say it's been a struggle because we have been doing it for so long, and we took it for granted that, oh, they're not going anywhere. So we must be doing something right. And we were doing that, but when we started talking about the student experience and what we're doing in the state now, and it should be that focused, they do. So overall, they do have lower rates of recidivism. And our students, yes, I can actually brag and say many of those students that you see at different places and who've transferred to 4 years, most of them, and I've heard them say this, that might be a little anecdotal, but the data says, yes, community college period does lower recidivism. That's part of even the study, the basis of what we're talking about, which is why it's so important to finding out why Black males who are incarcerated are not enrolling in our courses. That's huge. That's why, because yes, those two things go together. But overall, we're like, these students that we're seeing transfer to these 4-year universities who are formerly incarcerated, many of them started with us. So when they say Ironwood, that's us. And so I am so happy that I can claim them all. So I do. I claim them. If I see them, they're talking, I'm like, it's us. Yes, and it's a 90% reduction overall for both when you play in the one population, but when you combine the populations, it's still 75, but that's huge. That's 75% of the people who are not going back to prison within 2 years. So that is incredible. And so that's why it's so meaningful for us. We want to make sure our education is aligning with their R and their name, which is rehabilitation. So that's how I look at it. Yes, it's very massive. It's very impressive, which is why we love what we do.
Any other questions?
Thank you guys. Hi, Lisa. We're walking in your footsteps. So say that. Thank you guys. We really appreciate
I can't hear you, Lisa.
Yes, allowing us the space to share Palo Verde College, Pirate Pathways, and the Revolution. So thank you. Where's our information, Irma? Put our information.
Oh. All right, here we go. All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate you sitting through this with us as we try to tag team here. So I appreciate it and your support. And if you have any questions, there's our information right there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you, Diana.
Yes, Diana, thank you so much for preparing us.
No problem. Absolutely my pleasure.